That which festers unseen oft festers longest. Let no wound go ignored, be it of flesh, land, or soul. Kesselhafen stood proud at the confluence of two rivers, a walled town of towers, slate roofs, and steam rising from chimneys like breath from a sleeping ox. It was not a city of splendor, but of humility. The clatter of boots on cobble, the bark of orders in the yard, the low hum of a garrison that had never fallen, even when the banners of the dead had flown just miles beyond its gates. The early frost of Hexenstag clung to the eaves and banners as the dawn mist rolled low through the streets. Within the walls, soldiers and civilians went about their business with indifference to the world beyond the walls. Inside the officers' hall, a broad chamber of heavy timbers, clean flagstone, and a fire that burned steady, Captain Emmerich Vols stood alone by the hearth. His polished half-blade bore the black and crimson of the 3rd Ostermark, the Blackwood Tines. His helm rested beside him on the table, his gauntlets hung from one hand. Outside, the garrison bell clanged twice, a courier's arrival. Moments later, Sergeant Rydek entered, a tall man with a limp earned in the Drakwald, and bearing a sealed scroll in his gloved hand. The seal was unmistakable, black and crimson, stamped with the hammer of Sigmar and the crescent of the Elector's court. Some priest rode in from the city just now. He's at the gate and calls to see you, Rydek grunted, handing the scroll over. Vols said nothing as he accepted the scroll. He turned it once in his hands, then broke the seal with a flick of his thumb. The wax cracked like bone. He unrolled the parchment slowly, the heavy vellum whispering as it unfurled. Rydek waited, warming himself by the fireplace, arms crossed, helm tucked under one. The captain's eyes moved across the page, then aloud, voice low and steady. Captain, by the authority vested in my station and under advisement from the Temple of Sigmar, I hereby request immediate deployment of a reliable patrol to assist my envoy in his investigation of reports emerging from the hamlet of Drauwald. Said force is to act in support of my appointed ecclesiastical envoy, who travels now under seal and burden of holy duty to ascertain the nature of the disturbance and, if warranted, enact such measures as befit the authority granted to him under both civil and divine decree. A travelling merchant of Krugerland origin, one Lothar Beinrich, a man known for caution if not piety, arrived in the capital some 5 days past. His accounts were disjointed but troubling, detailing the townsfolk acting in a manner unsettling to the church. Temple physicians declared it a mental affliction and advised a swift pyre. While the matter is expected to be the work of forest brigands or vagrants from the north, you are to treat all local authority with cautious respect and investigate thoroughly. Dispatch with haste. Provision accordingly. You are not expected to remain long. Be advised, the men under your command are not to be made privy of the contents of this communique. Should matters arise concerning faith or filth, you are instructed to entrust them wholly to my appointed envoy. He travels under the hammer and flame, bearing the name Brother Ephron of the Crimson Mantle. You are to yield to his judgment in all matters spiritual or profane. Mercy is the luxury of safer provinces, Captain. My envoy knows this well. Trust in Sigmar's light. Obey without question. By my hand, Freiherr Otto Klempt, Under Chamberlain to the Elector of Ostermark. Written this 13th Hexenstag, in the 2523rd year of the Empire. The frost still clung to the cobbles when the gates of Kesselhafen groaned open for the final guest. He came without escort, a lone figure astride a ragged destrier, cloaked in robes the colour of dried blood and rust. His mount bore no banner, only the faint burn mark of the twin-tailed comet etched onto its flank. A call rang out from a sentry to allow him through. The man dismounted without flair. Guards parted without command. No greeting followed him, just his solitary walk beyond the square to the garrison proper. He entered the officers' hall unannounced. Captain Emmerich Vols stood over a map-slicked table, the parchment still fresh in his hands, the seal of the Elector broken and bleeding red into the wax. He looked up slowly, brow furrowed. So you're the one it names. Brother Ephron stepped into the glow of the hearth. He did not bow. The hammer strapped to his back glinted faintly in the firelight. I am Brother Ephron of the Crimson Mantle, he said simply. Vol's eyes narrowed. The letter doesn't say much. A merchant saw something strange. The temple saw fit to send you. The seal bears the Elector's mark, Ephron said, and the temple's flame. That is all you need to understand. Vol's jaw clenched. My men don't march blind. I've buried too many good soldiers chasing sermons. Across the room, Sergeant Rydek chuckled from his post by the fire, dragging a whetstone across his dagger. Wouldn't be the first time some priest called down Sigmar's fury, only to run when it gets too hot, he muttered, not bothering to look up. You don't look much different. Ephron's gaze moved to the sergeant, cold and unwavering. The Grand Theogonist does not send cowards, and I do not answer to insolence. Good, Rydek said, rising from the bench, because I wasn't asking. Vols raised a hand, silencing him, then turned his gaze back to the priest. You'll have your escort, but if this turns into another witch hunt or peasant fright, I won't just let my men die so you can light a pyre and call it holy work. Ephron stepped closer, calm and unreadable. The Empire endures because some carry the burden without needing to know the weight. Then quieter. Do not mistake measured words for ignorance, Captain. You were chosen, not informed. A pause. Vols stared at him, then folded the letter sharply and tucked it into his belt. You'll have your patrol. We'll leave on first light. Send a raven to your superiors. The priest turned to go. The fire cast long shadows behind him. He did not look back. Rydek exhaled and spat into the hearth. Sigmar's balls, he muttered. One of those types. Vols dipped his quill and scratched out a copy of the orders for the quartermaster, then looked to Rydek. Make preparations, he stated. Rydek rose, sliding his dagger into its sheath. Aye, he said. Time to see what crawls east of the maps. The next day, dawn's light bathed over the countryside as the 3rd Ostermark Blackwood Tines, out of Kesselhafen, 25 strong, led by Captain Emmerich Vols and Sergeant Rydek late of the Hochland Pike Guard. Together you've seen a fair few deployments along the Drakwald fringe, but this time your orders took you east, deeper than usual, into the old forests where the trees climb like ribs into the sky, and the soil squelches black beneath your boots. The province of Ostermark is quiet in the worst way. Once rich lands long bled dry by war, left to rot in the shadow of blackwoods and darker histories. The Empire barely keeps its footing here. Nobles grow fat behind stone walls, while their border folk rot in the muck, ever watchful of what crawls down from the world's edge mountains, or worse, what grows inside the forests. You were dispatched from Kesselhafen, by sealed orders handed down after a Krugerland trader, pale-faced and frantic, brought word of unrest in a remote lumber village known as Drauwald. Now you find yourself on a long march. This is a routine patrol. Deterrence, the sergeant said. Keep the bandits guessing, maybe scare off a few goblin scouts or beastkin stragglers that wandered too close to civilization. You are not told to expect a fight, but each man in the line keeps a hand near the haft of his halberd, and every eye lingers long on the spaces between the trees. You know better. You are not green recruits. You've bloodied your blades before. A skirmish with beastmen near the velt's edge, a long winter watching the wolf paths for goblin warbands, and of things we dare not recount. To speak it aloud is to invite the eyes and ears of the inquisitive, or worse, the flame-fed wrath of a zealous Sigmarite preacher eager to prove his faith. So those who march do so quietly, questions swallowed by the rhythm of boots on earth and the thud of worn hearts behind rust-streaked breastplates. Ahead, just beyond a bend in the trail, wooden palisades emerge from the fog, half covered in moss and weathered by years of sun and rot. Drauwald, a village you'd never heard of until 3 days ago. Sergeant Rydek has now pulled ahead, breaking formation with that limping gait of his. A scarred hound of a man, the kind bred on meat rations and bitter winters. He's seen more years of war than any of you dare count aloud. Most days he barely speaks above a growl, his orders barked with cold precision. But now he speaks in hushed tones. He leans in close to the figure walking at the captain's side, a man not of the company, but not to be mistaken for a common pilgrim, the priest, Brother Ephron of the Crimson Mantle. He sits at the lead with the captain, mounted on a steed, unarmoured save for a chain-lined vestment, gorget, robes the colour of bloodied rust trailing in the dirt. His face is bare, shaven and severe, no expression, no warmth. Rydek finishes his words with a slow nod, and Brother Ephron turns slightly, casting his eyes across the column, as if measuring the weight of your souls. Captain Emmerich Vols, straight-backed atop his steed in his black and crimson half-plate, face like cold iron beneath his visored helm, beckons to Sergeant Rydek. Then the sergeant turns. His voice splits the fog like a cannonade across a riverbank, rough as gravel and twice as unrelenting. Drauwald lies just beyond. Tighten the line, you sons of Altdorf whores. Helms high, spine straight. We don't march under the muddy dregs of some borderline levy. Rydek sweeps a hard eye across the column. Pikes lift slightly. A few men mutter. One stumbles quickly, riding himself. Rydek appears unimpressed, but he's served long enough to know the weight of men's shoulders after days of marching. He doesn't expect perfection, just as close as he can get. He spits into the wet earth and speaks something to the warrior priest and captain mounted ahead. Now the mist parts just enough to show lanterns swaying on iron hooks, and the faint glow of hearth smoke rising above crooked rooftops. A place by all accounts welcoming to your aching heels. A collection of timber longhouses and shingled dwellings arranged around a central chapel and communal yard. Thin smoke curls from chimneys. Woodcutters haul cords to the drying sheds. Children loiter under the eaves, quiet but watching. No one waves. Captain Vols gives the order to make camp just outside the tree line. A half-circle perimeter. You draw the first watch. The captain and sergeant head toward the village square, led by the priest and the company's quartermaster to seek lodging and formal reception. You stand by the campsite as you watch from afar. One of the village elders steps out to meet them. A rail-thin man with sunken eyes, smile stretched just a touch too long. He nods deferentially, bows even. He gestures towards the chapel with exaggerated warmth. None of the villagers seem surprised to see you. In fact, none of them seem anything at all. A child watches from a window, unmoving. Her face pressed so close to the glass it fogs in a perfect oval, but she doesn't blink. An old woman scrubs the same patch of wood on her stoop, over and over, the bristles worn to nubs. There's no barking of dogs, no clatter of tools. A man walks past leading a cart of firewood. He doesn't look up, not even when a soldier calls out to him. He just keeps walking. The chimneys puff smoke, but none of it carries the smell of food. Sergeant Rydek returned from the chapel. His expression flat and stony, but it always is. He peeled off his glove and scanned the assembled men with that same scouring glare he always wore before something went wrong. "We'll be taking a tally," he barked, voice cracking the quiet. "Names, faces. One count before nightfall, another come first light. I want it written. If something don't belong, someone's gone wandering, or something ain't quite right, Captain ought to know. The Sigmarite and Captain are still with the elders," he added, tones suggesting neither approval nor doubt. "And until they're done praying or parleying, we do our duty. Otto and Willen, you'll start with the butcher, and make your way about town. Your name is called. You step forward." Otto hesitated slightly. Rydek raised a brow. "Well, don't just stand there gawping. Start where the meat stacks. Butcher ought to know who's got mouths to feed, and see if he can spare something decent while you're at it." You exchanged a look with the other soldier before trudging off towards the squat building with the half-hinged ox head sign, barely visible through the fog. The butcher's shop squatted low and hunched, Nestled between the chapel and the muddled tangle of buildings in the village, a shadowed place where chimney soot smeared thick across the warped timbers. The front stoop leaned forward like a drunken beggar, sagging boards creaking beneath your boots. The door swung inward before your knuckles touched the wood. "Evening, lads," came a soft voice from within, warm and welcoming, as if expecting old friends. "Thought you might visit. Isn't oft we see soldiers from the city. We always take good care of our guests." Otto shifted uncomfortably. Ledger clenched beneath his arm and cleared his throat roughly. "Sergeant wants a tally. Names, head counts. Who's here, who ain't? Are you alone, Butcher? What about your family?" A massive shape stepped forward from the shadows, moving with an easy grace, at odds with his bulk. He was huge, neck thick and ruddy, flushed like fresh boiled meat. His apron glistened darkly, soaked through with stains, some brown, some red, others sickly and yellowed. Sweat beaded on his wide forehead, dripping slowly along his cheekbones. He smiled as if it pained him, lips pulled taut over teeth yellow and crooked. "Folks here pride themselves on hospitality," the butcher crooned, thick fingers absently smearing an unknown filth onto his apron. "Feast like nowhere else in Ostermark. All the neighbours know." He raised one enormous hand, gesturing towards slab of meats, hanging on darkened hooks. His cleaver rested on the block below, chipped and worn, the blade nicked from heavy and repeated use. Otto's eyes lingered suspiciously on the soiled apron. "Just names," he replied. The butcher laughed softly, deep in his chest. "Ah, names. I keep to my cuts, not ledgers." He picked up the cleaver and casually hacked a slab of darkened flesh into slices, wet, ragged strokes leaving pale splinters of bone in the wood. Each impact made your stomach turn slightly. He presented the slices on a rough platter, still steaming faintly. The colour was off, too dark and marbled, with lines of fatty yellow rot. "You must be starving," he murmured warmly. "Long march, hungry work. This one smoked nice and slow." His smile widened just slightly, eyes glinting. "We pride ourselves on our meats. Tender flesh, perfect fat, just melts away in the mouth." Otto stiffened, his voice tight. "What meat is that exactly?" The butcher's expression flickered, just for a heartbeat, then settled easily back into place. He chuckled softly. "Boar, most likely." He paused theatrically. "Or maybe it's dog, or who knows, could even be a priest. Tastes enough alike when the smoke done its work." He grinned broadly, eyes searching yours, eagerly waiting for a reaction that never came. A slow, awkward silence filled the air. "Jestin', of course," he added quickly, smile stretching wider still. "Of course it's boar. Shot it myself up near the ridgeline. Fresh and clean. No rot here. Drauwald feeds its guests only the best." He lifted a slice and sniffed approvingly. Filth-crusted nails dripping grease onto the counter. "Ask any neighbour about Drauwald. Folks here, they give everything to their guests. Always room for more at our table." He leaned closer, voice dropping, breath heavy and sour. "Our generosity never tires." Otto drew a sharp breath, scribbling hastily into the ledger. Otto backed slowly away. The butcher straightened and wiped something dark and sticky from his cleaver onto his apron, the smile unmoving, eyes still glittering. As you turn to leave, Otto pauses, just a beat too long. A glistening maggot writhes slowly from beneath one of the meat slices on the platter. It curls white and bloated, before slipping into a fold of gristle. Neither of you say a word, but your eyes linger. Beyond the counter, half hidden in shadow, you catch the glint of iron, a cellar door thick and reinforced, padlocked with a heavy rusted clasp. Just above the bolt, a smear of dried blood trails downward in a sticky brown arc. The butcher follows your gaze, then chuckles low in his throat, unfazed and unsurprised. "Oh, that," he rumbles, voice full of strange amusement. "Nothing but old stock down there. Best left to cure proper. Some cuts take longer, you know? He leans forward, lowering his voice as if sharing a trade secret. But if either of you lads change your minds, he taps the cleaver hard against the chopping block. We always keep seconds. That smile again. Too wide. Too eager. The door creaks gently shut behind you as you step back into the fog. The butcher's voice floating after you like the smell of spoiled spice. Drauwald don't waste a thing. Above the old chapel bell groans slowly. Otto steps from the butcher's shadow beside you. Ledger wedged beneath one arm. Quill jammed hastily behind his ear. He glances at the fading daylight and mutters, "No meat secured. Might as well tally faster. Keep Rydek's temper cool." The lane coils inwards, leading away from the sour stench of the butcher's stall towards Drauwald's heart. Though calling it a square grants it dignity it doesn't quite deserve. The street is little more than a sodden scar of mud and cracked flagstone, fringed by sagging half-timbered houses, whose walls lean precariously inward. Chimneys sputter acrid smoke into a heavy sky, staining shingles black. Rain pools in shallow basins, shimmering oily green beneath drifting curtains of mist. You've seen worse in your travels around the province. Just another Sigma forgotten backwater. Villagers appear from doorways as you approach. Not many, not all at once, but enough to feel uncomfortably watched. They emerge as if summoned, pausing their work, stepping slowly forward, faces too calm, movements oddly deliberate. Each stands patiently, staring, waiting. You call to them one by one, and each replies readily. Otto jots each down without comment. A woman clutching a basket of swollen turnips grins broadly, eyes glinting dully, her lips stretched too thin. A stable hand waves slowly, as if greeting long-awaited friends, a smile lingering like a ghost. They all smile. None question why you're counting their names. Several greet Otto by name, though neither of you have spoken your own. You and Otto exchange uneasy glances, but say nothing. A woman with a weather-warped prayer wheel mutters something under her breath as you pass. All Father sees, all Father waits. Otto turns to question the woman before he's interrupted. A man shuffles into Otto's view, blocking his gaze from the woman. He was thin, bent, and wrapped in a heavy cloak patched too many times, his face shadowed by a hood that drips steadily with rainwater. He bows low as he reaches you, an odd motion for a villager addressing soldiers. "Evening, masters," the man murmurs softly, stepping forward from beneath the sagging awning of a shopfront. His face emerges from shadow, round, pale dough-like skin, glistening with sweat and grime, his eyes set too deep and too dark. Otto readies his quill, impatient. "Name and trade," he says. "Carsten," the villager replies warmly, his voice syrupy soft. "I'm Drauwald's baker. Bread, pies, whatever fills the belly." He pauses, his lips curling faintly upward, eyes glittering. "You'll have some before you leave, won't you? Hospitality is our tradition." You frown, slightly unsettled. "Generous. Didn't see a bakery on the way in," you reply. Carsten chuckles gently, though the warmth never reaches those dark, glossy eyes. "Oh, we've always been baking, masters. Oven's never cold." His gaze flickers briefly to Otto's ledger, then returns to you. "Careful accounting tonight, I see. Tallying up our little village." Otto shifts uneasily. "Just orders," he replies. The baker smiles wider, cheeks twitching slightly beneath a sheen of perspiration. "Good. Numbers are important. The right ingredients, the right measures. That's how things keep proper." He leans forward a touch too closely, voice lowering to almost a whisper. "We keep things proper here. Everyone contributes. Everyone gets their fill." A tongue darts briefly out over his lips. "We wouldn't want you leaving hungry." Your throat feels suddenly dry, but Otto snaps his ledger shut sharply. "Not hungry, baker. We just want names." Carsten straightens slowly, his smile lingering even as his eyes darken again. as though extinguished. "Of course," he says softly. "Enjoy your stay, masters. It's always such a pleasure to serve new faces." He steps back into the shadow of the awning, obscuring the view of the woman, his pale hands gently clasped, watching silently as you move on, never once blinking, the friendly masks slipping only after you pass. The road bends again. Otto slows near the school hall, a squat, uneven building ringed in iron fretwork. One shutter is closed, the other hangs loose. The door creaks open as a breath of musty air and old ink flows past you. The school hall smells of cedar and damp parchment, with a thin undertone of sickly sweet rot that doesn't quite belong. Thomas, another man of the company who was already in the school hall, glances over his shoulder as you enter, nodding once. Alan, another man, stands a few paces further in, arms crossed, posture uneasy. His thumb rubs at the pommel of his short sword. The gaunt man, his neck thin and pale like a plucked goose, fingers stained dark with chalk and pitch, shifts slightly as you speak. For a brief moment, a cockroach scuttles across the worn fabric of his clothes, unnoticed by him but caught in the corner of your eye. A thin trickle of dark liquid leaks from his nose. He wipes it away with a trembling hand, but the faint, unsettling smile never leaves his lips. "Ah," he says. "More census takers. A rare pleasure." Otto fixes the teacher with a cold glance. "We're no scholars, counting heads," he says low. "We're soldiers, sent to reckon what's stirring in Drauwald." The children look up, their faces are pale, round, too still, their small fingers moving with unnatural purpose. Some carve little figures from soft bark or bone, gouging deep with blunt tools. Others scratch runes into wax-smeared slates. The shapes don't look like letters. Not Reichsspiel. Not anything you've ever seen. One girl giggles to herself and whispers into her carving. You catch a glimpse of it. A swollen creature. A tongue where eyes should be. She hushes it softly, then begins again. Otto clears his throat. "You run the schoolhouse." The teacher nods. "I nurture minds, yes. Young wood grows best when shaped early." Alan shifts. "And their names?" "Oh yes, all present," he replies. "All accounted for. Every child's here, well tended, well fed. No strays, and no losses." His grin is too wide. "Their minds blossom with such imagination," he adds. Otto frowns, scribbling notes. "We'll need their names in writing then," he replies. "Of course, though you may find the ink runs a little." He picks up a quill and dips it into a pot. The ink is the wrong shade, almost congealed. He begins writing, script looping oddly, like the quill resists him. "How many children are in Drauwald, you ask?" The teacher's gaunt fingers glide across the parchment. "Enough to fill these benches," he says, smoothly, voice polite but strained. "Our children are diligent learners." Alan moves to one of the benches. A boy carves a figure, something like a toad with bulbous skin. He doesn't look up. The strokes are reverent in execution, beyond what a child should be capable of. "Where did they learn this?" Alan asks. His gaze lingers on the children, bent low over their wooden carvings and scribbled books. "Strange things for schoolwork," he states. "Not the sort of lessons I'd expect." The teacher's thin lips curl into a straight smile. His neck twitches ever so slightly, and for a moment his eyes drift apart. A dark stain seeps slowly along the edge of his sleeve. "Learning comes in many forms," he replies, voice soft but firm. "We encourage creativity." He produces the parchment from his desk with a practiced flick. The ink still drying, with a faint bow, he extends it towards Otto. "Now then," the teacher says, with a tone of nervous excitement. "You've gathered what you came for, yes? Names, numbers. The Empire will sleep easier, I'm sure." He doesn't wait for a reply. His hand gestured directly towards the door. "I've lessons to continue," and the children are easily distracted. Otto takes the parchment. You exchange a glance. He raises a brow but says nothing. The four of you turn toward the door. As it creaks shut behind you, a soft thud cuts through the low murmur of the school hall. You turn just enough to see one of the children slumped face first onto their desk. Silent. No one else stirs. The teacher continues writing, his sleeves slowly soaking with something dark from his wrist to elbow. The four of you gather without a word. Otto is the first to glance back over his shoulder at the crooked windows, but he says nothing. Alan rubs his forearm like he's been bitten, and Thomas mutters a prayer under his breath. The square is quiet, save for the hollow creak of the chapel bell overhead and the heavy footfalls approaching across the stone. Captain Bowles emerges from the low chapel steps with Quartermaster Dieter at his flank. Between them moves the Sigmarite, Father Ephron. The captain's eyes scan your faces. His tone is low, but sharp with command. "Come from the schoolhouse," he states. Otto nods once. "We have, sir." "Something foul clings to this place, sir," Otto states, his gaze flicking towards Father Ephron, who stands motionless, his lips tight, eyes locked into Otto's, his hands folded around his warhammer as if in prayer. Quartermaster Dieter, a silver-haired and blunt career soldier, abruptly states, "I've been all over this here empire in my 30 years of soldiering," he says. "Fought beastmen in the forests and greenskins in the steppes. I've seen things that ought not walk, and other Sigmar-damned beasts." His eyes land on you. "This place is neat, not far off a Reichsguard parade ground," Dieter mutters, eyes still scanning the windows and alleys. "But it stinks of something foul, like a corpse scrubbed up and dressed for dinner." "That's enough," the captain's voice interrupts. It cuts clean through the dusk like a whetted blade. You and the others fall quiet, boots shifting in the square's dust. He steps forward, arms behind his back, silver hair like braided wire beneath his helm. His eyes sweep you all. "If there's something worth saying, you say it to Rydek." A nod to the sergeant behind you, already approaching with a furrowed brow. "He'll bring it to me. That's how we keep our heads clear, and on our shoulders." The priest says nothing, but you feel his presence like a storm cloud. He stands just behind the captain, heavy robes still speckled with the road, the hammer of Sigmar shining faintly beneath his gorget. His eyes are unreadable. The captain shifts slightly, just enough to block the priest's view. "We're soldiers, not gossiping women." His glance lingers on each of you a breath too long. He's not angry, he's making sure you understand. "Sort yourselves. We're done for today, set up for camp." He looks to Rydek and gives the faintest nod. An unspoken order passed between men who've bled on the same fields. Then louder, for all to hear. "And keep your thoughts to yourselves, until they're worth sharing." He turns on his heel, the priest falling in behind him. Rydek exhales hard through his nose. "You heard the captain. Square yourselves away." Evening bleeds into night slow as pitch, and Drauwald sinks into silhouette. You're back beyond the village edge now, the cold soil of Ostermark underfoot, thick with needles and damp grass. 25 men make camp in a clearing cut by the old road, and hemmed in by woods that whisper even when the wind's gone still. Rydek saw to the arrangements quick and quiet. 2 fires lit, low and smokeless, one for warmth, one for cooking. The carts form a crude half-ring, defensible enough, with shields stacked and pikes propped at the ready. The banner of the Blackwood Tines, tattered, black and yellow, stitched with the gallows tree, hangs limp beside the fire, weighed down with dew. Some of the lads are in good spirits, or trying to be. Wolf and Gerhard dice in the mud with a tin cup between them, laughing too loud at nothing. Bors carved a pipe from a root he picked up on the march. It barely draws, but he smokes it like it's dwarven ivory. Halsman's sharpening his sword, running whetstone down steel with rhythm only a soldier finds comforting. A few are more quiet. You catch Thomas, Otto and Alan speaking low near the supply packs. They aren't joking. Eyes flick towards the village behind you now and again, like Drauwald might come walking. No sign of the priest, but no one mentions it. Rydek stands near the fire, helm off, arms crossed, jaw set. He's watching everything and nothing all at once. his spear still within reach. The sun's bled out completely now, and a thin crescent moon crawls over the tree line. The night's damp, heavy, and oddly warm for the season. Crickets chirp, but not in the woods, only in the clearing. It's the kind of thing you don't notice until you do. 2 crossbowmen, Darren and Stoiber, take the first watch. Helmets on, crossbows loaded. They sit apart just past the carts, eyes on the shadows that stretch between the trees. Odd sort of town Boars mutters behind you, still gnawing at his pipe. Not unfriendly, just wrong. They don't blink right, Wolf offers from the dice circle. See that butcher fellow? Looked at me like I was a slab of meat. Gerhardt chuckles. They're not so bad. They seem friendly enough. No one's tried to stick me yet. I can't say the same about bandits. A burst of laughter follows, but it dies quick. The hour turns late. Midnight, or close enough. The fire's down to coals. Most of the men are asleep, bundled in their cloaks, helms tucked under heads, pikes stacked with care. Some snore softly, others twitch with dreams they won't remember. 25 bodies at uneasy rest, but yours remains awake. You volunteered for the last watch. Maybe it was the food, maybe the silence, maybe something in your gut that didn't like the idea of sleep. The wind's died down now. No night birds, no crickets, just the creak of branches. You shift your weight on the overturned crate you've made into a seat. Your sword rests upright between your knees, palm on the pommel, still warm. Your eyes drift toward the village again, nestled under the boughs like a tick buried in the fur. The houses squat and hunched, roofs bowed and damp. And from the dark square at its heart, you hear it. Laughter. Not loud, not raucous. Children, giggling and whispering. It drifts on the air like pipe smoke, curling around trees, threading between tents. No words you can make out, no clear direction. Just laughter, soft and wrong. The kind children make when no adults are around. The kind they make when they're doing something they shouldn't. You grip the pommel tighter. No other movement in the village. No flicker of lanterns. No glow from hearths. But the sound continues. 1 child, then 2, then more. Circling the square if you had to guess. Then suddenly, a high-pitched shriek of joy, like someone won a game. Come out. It's not a whisper, not quite. Not words you hear, but something you felt. Like a memory forming in the marrow of your spine. A childish voice too soft to wake the camp, but too near to ignore. Come out. Come see. You rise without thinking. Sword left resting. Bedrolls past without glance. The fire no longer matters. Your boots make no sound against the wet soil. The forest seems to draw back as you walk, trees leaning away like old men holding their breath. Mist clings to your knees. The moon has fled. Just a little farther, the voices chatter. Their voices come like wind through barley, high-pitched and syrup-thick, tugging at the threads of your mind. You step onto the path leading to the square. You've walked it earlier, but this time it stretches, bends, and curves subtly in the wrong way. Then comes the smell. At first it's sweet, mulled wine maybe, stewed apples and cloves, hearth bread. You swallow. Another step, and the sweetness deepens. It thickens. It turns. What was wine is vinegar. What was apple is rot. What was hearth bread is wet dough left out in the summer sun. Sickly, clinging, fermented and foul. Flies hum near your ear, and you swat them away. And then the square is before you. Children ring the dry well like dancers at festival. Their backs are to you, unmoving, hands clasped. Their heads sway slightly as if listening to music you cannot hear. Then one turns, a girl, blonde once, maybe. Under the grime her smile is too wide, teeth too small and too neat. Her eyes reflect the torchless dark. We knew you'd come, she says. You want to run, but you don't. Behind her the others, part like a curtain revealing what they've circled. A mound. At first you think it's a harvest pile, bundles of cloth, meat, wet hay, offerings maybe. But the buzzing thickens, shapes sharpen, limbs, flesh, pale and green and ruptured with growth. Flies erupt in a cloud, wings slick with moisture. The girls step aside. They gave themselves so we wouldn't have to, she says cheerfully. That's how it works. Isn't that nice? You stagger backward. Your breath catches in your throat. Something inside you breaks, not cracks, not splinters. It snaps. The illusion, whatever thin veil your mind had clung to, tears like wet cloth. You stagger back from the square, eyes wide and useless in the dark, yet you see everything. The children, if they are still children, now face you fully. Skin waxy and leprous, faces pitted with black, weeping holes, where maggots churn through their cheeks and brow. One boy raises his hand to wave and 3 of his fingers fall off, soft as overripe fruit. Their mouths stretch, split, grins bleeding at the corners. You run, boots pounding against the slick stone of Drauwald Square. Your breath rasps high and sharp. Every heartbeat feels like a hammer blow in your ears. You turn a corner, and she's there. A matronly woman, bent-backed and wide of hip, rocking gently on her heels, a wicker basket in her arms. Her apron is stiff with dried gore. Inside the basket, turnips, or heads, or both. Out late, dear, she coos. Best get back. You'll catch your death. You shoulder past her and don't look back. Another corner, another figure. A man in the old elector's colours, now rotted and sloughing from his frame. His skin flakes in sheets and his beard is matted with pus. He leans on a plough blade sharpened to a cleaver's edge. No need to hurry, he drawls. We saved you a seat. You run, they don't chase. They wait. Every step feels slower, heavier, as if the air thickens with decay. Every breath a lungful of damp mould and butcher's slurry. Your legs burn, your stomach lurches. You find the path to camp. Their woods barely shield the smell now. It clings to your tongue, seeping from pores. Then you see the firelight, dimmer than it should be, too still. You burst into the camp proper. Something is wrong. The fire has been kicked apart, embers cooling in black ash. Bedrolls are torn, scattered like leaves. No watch posted, no movement, no... And then you see it, looming like an oppressive shadow. The butcher, backlit by the dying glow, fat arms gleaming. His apron is gone, his chest is bare. The skin cracked and pitted like boiled leather. A belly split by ritual scars, some still weeping, and others filled with mushrooms blooming in putrid magnificence. He turns. Otto's head dangles from one hand. The neck is hacked, not cut. The rough work of a heavy cleaver. Splinters of spine and tendon still clinging like torn cloth. Otto's face is frozen in a scream, mouth stretched, eyes glassed over. The butcher grins, the same warped grin from the day prior, only wider now, their teeth inside, not all his own. Thought you'd come back, he rumbles, voice thick like boiling gravy. He raises Otto's head. Brought the first course. His other hand gestures to the severed head of your comrade. You're just in time, the butcher croons. It's not every day Drauwald gets guests. His smile splits wider. Now, let's eat. You don't have time to scream. Not when the butcher lifts Otto's head like a lantern, swinging it gently. Not when he begins to hum low and tuneless, as if preparing to carve the roast. Not when your legs go rigid, frozen from the pestilent blighted presence rooting you in place. The butcher begins to lumber closer to you, his eyes wide with jovial bliss. Then, crack. A flash of gold and white bursts from the tree line, left of the camp, where fog rolls like spilled milk. A hammer of pure steel, two-handed and wreathed in the sunburst of Sigmar, descends in an arc of holy judgment. It connects with the butcher's skull. There is a sound like stone shattering. The blow splits his head clean down the middle, like a melon under a smith's axe. Black-red gore geysers out. Bits of tooth and shattered jaw scatter across the ground. But the butcher doesn't fall. He staggers, but stands, laughing, neck split wide open like a second grin, thick ropes of blood pulsing down his bloated stomach. He gargles froth, and blood bubbling from the remnants of his face, half his tongue hanging like spoiled meat, but his eyes, dangling from the shattered sockets, gleam with merriment. "Oh ho ho ho, that's the spirit priest," he cackles, swaying on his knees. "Rattle my skull like a cook's pot, but oh, you still reek of vinegar and sermons. Where's your smile, eh?" He spreads his arms wide, viscera spilling like garlands from his chest. "We laugh in the garden, hammerman. We know what joy smells like. It's sweet and soft and turning green." He points a swollen blackened finger towards the holy man now squaring his shoulders in the dying firelight. The priest is spattered with gore, grim-faced, his gorget catching flickers of gold. "You lot always fear decay, don't you?" the butcher slurs. "But our father, he welcomes it. Embrace it, hammerman. His arms are wider than yours, and he never turns his back on his children." The butcher drops Otto's head. It thuds to the ground unsanctimonious in its descent. The butcher rears his putrid arm back to swing the gore-spattered cleaver onto the priest. The priest says nothing, his gaze locked steadily on the butcher. He strides forward as you take a step back, and your foot catches on something soft. You glance down, and nearly retch. The corpses, at first you don't recognize them. Rearranged, arms from one man placed to the torso of another, legs split at the thigh and rejoined in some grotesque assembly. A face, Thomas's, stretched across a ribcage like parchment. Eyes empty. It isn't a pile. It's an abomination. A mass assembled from your comrades, ritualized. A low buzzing rises, not in your ears but in your soul. Your gaze rejoins to the butcher and priest who have traded blows, neither felling one another. The butcher wheezes, then shudders. His chest splits down the sternum, burst open from a glancing hammer blow. From the gaping wound, maggots pour, fat and glistening, writhing like fingers across his open belly. Flies swarm upward, blooming from the cavity like smoke, wings droning loud enough to drown your own breath. The smell is unimaginable. It churns your stomach immediately. He falls to his knees, intestines unraveling in steaming ropes. "Yes," he sighs, delighted. "Yes, my little ones. Crawl, feed, birth yourselves into the world." His arms are raised in benediction, his tongue flaps about, eyes rolled to white as if in ecstasy. He laughs heartedly and deeply as the sight before you unfolds. The priest raises his hammer again, and this time when it lands, it crushes what remains of the butcher's skull into his torso with a wet collapse. The butcher's laughter cuts off, but the buzzing, the birthing, continues as the viscera continues to undulate from the butcher's corpse. You gaze in morbid bewilderment as the butcher's body lies crumpled in the dirt, belly yawning open in a wet grin. Flies burst like spores from the gash, crawling thick over the remnants of the grin. The priest plants a boot on the twitching body. It sinks slightly into the putrid mass. His breath comes in slow, wrathful gulps, not tired, not panicked, but restrained. He looks at you, face smeared with soot, ichor and gore, eyes still bright with holy fire. "Steel yourself," he growls, voice hoarse from screaming litanies. The butcher's feast is over. They ambush the camp, the priest continues. These foul cultists, the captain and Rydek fought back. Sigmar guide them. I came when I saw you before this filth. I'll not let God-fearing men of the Empire die in the mud to this filth if I can help it. Not while I still draw breath. This town wears the skin of loyalty, but it stinks of unholy rot. His eyes go distant, then steel sharp. He grips your shoulder with the weight of a tombstone. Steel is the father of faith. Fire, its firstborn son. We find them. We return to Castlehafen, and we burn this wretched town. The echo of ominous laughter erupts from the town. You see the silhouettes of villagers walking slowly down the path towards the camp. Immense dread overwhelms you. The priest beckons you to follow him to where he last saw the captain and sergeant. You both proceed through the forest, laughter swirling around, flies buzzing at your heels. You break through the scrub and then your eyes adjust to an ungodly sight. A clearing behind a granary, where the earth dips into a small hollow. The moon glimmers faintly on blood-soaked grass. Corpses are strewn about like broken dolls. Villages, mostly, sliced, caved in, and hacked to ruin. On his knees at the center of the carnage is the captain. What's left of his armor hangs in tatters, silver hair matted and stained deep crimson. His midsection is a yawning cavern, raw, glistening, steam rising into the cold air, held only by torn leathers and sheer, desperate will. Around him a dozen townsfolk kneel, moaning in strange ecstasy. Some stroke his thighs with sick reverence, others smear his exposed entrails with a thick honeyed pitch that glistens unnervingly. One mutters a warped lullaby, voice unnerving to even the hardest of soldiers. Another chuckles darkly, smearing his own filth across the captain's battered cuirass. They chant softly now between breathless sobs of joy. The All-Father is pleased. The garden grows. Beside him, a bloated plague-bearer leers, easily the height of 3 men, its sagging bulk clothed in rotted folds of flesh that peel and hang like slaughterhouse curtains. One arm ends in a weeping scythe of bone, the other drips bile from countless gaping sores. Its single eye is milky and lidless, embedded in a crater of split cartilage. Worms nest in its gut like pearls in an oyster, crawling in and out of a rupture where a second face tries to form. Lips twitching, nostrils flaring, as if the demon were bringing another self in slow, pained sacrilege to this world. It smiles too. Captain Voles watches them work with eyes dull, yet alive. His lips curl into a ragged smile. He slurs, voice bubbling with guttural gurgles. I birthed this harvest. My marrow feeds the seed. His gaze locks with yours, unfocused but terrible in its certainty. There is no death, only the garden, and I am ready to grow. Then, as if remembering you, as if Sigmar himself allows him one last breath of clarity before the rot claims his mind utterly, the captain's brow twitches, his eyes flicker, blood and bile spill from his cracked lips, and in a moment of awful lucidity, he croaks, Rydek, Sigmar, help me. Then his smile returns, not proud, not brave, but glistening and wide, and he begins to laugh. Despite the grim scene unfolding, the townsfolk nor the plague-bearer show any sign of care for the priest and soldier who have quietly approached. They remain utterly absorbed in their morbid ritual, caught in a rapturous frenzy that shields them from the world outside, an unholy communion beyond all reason. The sergeant lies pinned against the base of a dead tree, pike haft snapped beneath him, a splintered shaft embedded through his thigh, his face a ruin, one eye sealed shut by a purple knot, lips swollen, blood running from nose and ear. Slick with blood and worse, his hand presses against his side, trying in vain to keep his guts from spilling further through the cracked fingers. Had a feeling, he mutters, voice thick with anguish. Folk smelt like dung and looked worse. He coughs, a wet rattling thing that brings up a smear of black onto his chin. But no, he breathes, staring at the sky, unfocused. Orders are orders, Emperor's damn seal, priest's damn silence. He winces, grits his teeth, then chuckles, bitter and sharp. Just wish I'd stopped at the Kesselhafen Inn one more time. That red-haired lass behind the bar. Gods, what I wouldn't give for one last good tumble before this shit. He closes his eyes, breath slowing, but the crooked grin still tugs at his ruined face. Ah well, he rasps. That's soldierin'. March east into a pit of rot. Die in the muck with your cock dry and your boots wet. You see the priest kneel to the sergeant, his grip firm on his hammer as he leans closer. Sergeant Rydek, he says low, do you ask for Sigmar's mercy? Rydek chuckles. I won't pretend I earned it clean, but I'll take it if he's offering. He gestures weakly towards his flask. And pour a sip of the Klausenfire for the boys, eh? If they're still breathing. The priest's voice was like stone dragged across iron. The Empire forgets it's dead. Sigmar does not. Go to his light, Sergeant. Rydek exhaled, long and shuddering. He passes before you both. At least he didn't succumb to the same fate as the captain. You feel the weight of Rydek's final breath hang heavy in the cold air. The priest lowers his gaze, voice low and grim. We must make for Kesselhafen. This plague festers too deep to contain here. You nod, stepping back to turn, but the forest answers with a cold, wet rustle. Through the skeletal limbs and tangled brush, figures begin to emerge. Not one or two, but dozens, then scores, then a seething tide of villagers. Their flesh hangs loose, mottled with sores, eyes glassy, oozing filth, skin slick with sweat and rot. Some drag twisted limbs, others shuffle with sickened gait, all their mouths twisted in broken, vacant grins. You count no fewer than 100, far too many for the small settlement of Drauwald. The priest tightens his grip on his hammer, lips pulled tight like a drawn blade. Then, beyond the grotesque mass, a dark shape stirs. A monstrous silhouette coils through the trees, impossibly large, crowned with festering horns that drip thick ichor onto the cracked earth. Its breath is a sour wind that smells of decay and mildew. The ground beneath it wilts, grass curling black as if the very life is sucked out. A voice hoarse yet chillingly tender curls through the stillness, seeming to come from the very thing itself. Come, child, join your family. The All-Father waits, arms open, to cradle you in his eternal embrace. The villagers' hollow eyes turn towards you all at once, unblinking, unthreatening yet utterly alien in their joy. Their hands reach out, eager, insistent, to pull you into the suffocating swell of pestilence. The sickly sweet stench of rot thickens, pressing on your chest like a tomb. You and the priest stand back to back, the hammer raised. The weight of dread crushing in your gut. Somewhere deep, a part of you screams to flee. But the eyes of the plague-touched swarm hold you fast. Here in the creeping dark, the lines between death and unlife blurs into a grotesque carnival of suffering, and the All-Father's call promises only endless decay.